Welcome to Apostolic Islam, representing the faith God revealed, the prophets preached, and the Muslims kept. Christians and skeptics often accuse the Prophet ﷺ of copying biblical stories under the assumption that he is satanic and is an unoriginal claimant of prophethood. The reality, however, is that the Qur'an constantly corrects the Bible. Some of these examples are known, such as the Exodus narratives and general Egyptology. However, the correction presented today is not very well known, and most apologists and even academics miss it. We will briefly introduce the viewers to the city of Nineveh and how Jonah portrays it. We will then analyze its archaeology and show how the Bible contradicts real history and how Jonah's version of Nineveh is impossible. We will then show how the Qur'an avoids this error by indicating to the reader the much smaller population of Nineveh, which is actually in line with the archaeological data. What Jonah says about Nineveh. Jonah 3:3. So Jonah set out and went to Nineveh, according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly large city, a 3 days' walk across. Jonah here has emphasized the great size of Nineveh in the 3rd chapter, although the description of 3 days is slightly ambiguous according to some commentators. It is in the 4th chapter where we truly get a direct confirmation of the city and its population. It notes that there are 120,000 people who can't or do not know their right hand from their left. Jonah 4 reads, "And the Lord said, You pity the plant for which you did not labor, nor did you make it grow, which came into being in a night and perished in a night. And should not I pity Nineveh, that great city, in which there are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right hand from their left, and also much cattle?" Jonah 4:10-11. The common commentary on the verse Jonah 4:11, as well as its apparent reading specifically through in which there are more than 100,020 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, implies the city of Nineveh had 120,000 small children who could not tell the difference between their right and their left hands. It follows that extrapolating 120,000 small children implies a total population of the city of Nineveh to be around 600,000 to 2 million, when factoring in teenagers, parents, adults without children, and old people. Additionally, the mention of cattle necessitates a sizable space of farmland, which also lowers the available space for the people. Jonah is a well-known prophet who lived during the reign of Jeroboam II in the 8th century from 786 to 746 BCE, and we know that Nineveh underwent expansion from the Neo-Assyrian 883 to 859 BCE onward. Nineveh flourished under Sennacherib, circa 700 BC, and the total area of Nineveh would have been approximately 7 square kilometers, 1,730 acres, in this time. While Jonah lived in a period prior to Sennacherib's reign and his development of Nineveh, we would have no issue in using Sennacherib's Nineveh as a ceiling for Nineveh at the time and apply the dimensions of this Nineveh to the one described in Jonah. Furthermore, the ruins of Nineveh are still available to us in the present day, such that we can establish the size of Nineveh using these ruins. The length of the east wall is approximately 3 miles, 5 kilometers. The length of the south wall is approximately 2,624 feet, 0.8 kilometers. The west wall is approximately 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers. And the north wall is approximately 1.2 miles, 1.9 kilometers. The sum of these 4 walls is approximately 7.197 miles, 11.582 kilometers, commonly given around 11.6 to 12 kilometers. So far, these dimensions of Nineveh cohere with what we have on Nineveh in Sennacherib's reign. It is unreasonable to believe that, even when taking the lower bound of 600,000 people, that the city of Nineveh would be able to hold such a population. A common objection seen to this point, as seen in Philip Carey's Brazos Theological Commentary on the Bible, is that the phrase "more than 100,020 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left" refers to either the whole population of Nineveh or to the small children who do not yet know their right hand from their left. The former is claimed to be strengthened by the fact that the dichotomy between the right hand and the left is referenced in Deuteronomy through, "You shall be careful therefore to do as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. And if you do not turn aside from any of the words that I command you today, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other gods to serve them." Deuteronomy 5:32, 28:14. We will discuss how this objection has no real foundation in traditional scholarship and is a recent innovation as a result of pushback on this point. Traditional scholarship and the prevailing position outline that Jonah 4:11 is referring to children rather than adults. There are numerous examples demonstrating this, such as the commentaries given by Rashi, Mark Calvin, and more. In Rashi's commentary, he states, "Who do not know" refers to children, and many beasts as well refers to adults, who have the intelligence of beasts, and who do not recognize who created them. Rashi here clearly says that the 120,000 who do not know is in reference to children. If one counters by saying the 120,000 includes both children and adults, we say that this is not the historical interpretation, and that whenever the Bible mentions people who do not know between their right and their left, it is always in reference to infants. The best example is Isaiah 7:16, which actually claims that before the child knows to distinguish between good and evil, the land with the two kings will be deserted. Thus, the Bible is clear on the matter. Those who cannot choose between good and evil are infants, and thus in this case, Jonah cannot be speaking about 120,000 total people. In John Calvin's commentary of Jonah, he says, "Now, as to the number, Jonah mentions here 12 times 10,000 men, and that is as we have said, 120,000. And what he adds, that they could not distinguish between the right hand and the left, is to be referred, I have no doubt, to their age, and this opinion has been almost universally received. Someone, however, has expressed a fear lest the city should be made too large by allowing such a number of men. He has therefore promiscuously included the old, as well as those of middle age and infants. But this view is too strained. I therefore reject this comment, as though Jonah here was speaking of all the Ninevites." From John Calvin's commentary, he quotes that the opinion "could not distinguish between the right hand and the left" has been almost universally received, and even refers to the opposing opinion as promiscuous and strained. While opposing denominations might be reluctant to accept Calvin and his views, his portrayal on this being the prevailing and even almost universal position strengthens the claim that the 120,000 refers to unlearned children who literally did not know their right hand from their left. The actual size population of Nineveh. Sennacherib, 704 to 681, reported that in former days to his rule, Nineveh only measured 9,300 cubits in circumference, and that his new construction of a wall — he states that previous rulers had not built a wall — included an additional 12,515 cubits that encircled some of the cultivated lands that surrounded the city, 31 for a total of 21,815 great cubits, which is approximately 7.5 miles. Factual fudging aside, for example, Sennacherib claims that no previous rulers had built a wall around Nineveh. Sennacherib still describes a wall merely 7.5 miles in circumference that surrounded both the city proper and outlining fields. Again, this is far short of the 60 miles that some modern translations might lead us to believe. It is clear to all modern commentators and historians that the size of Nineveh is not large enough to house 600,000 plus people. The realistic population would be 100,000 to 150,000 people. In fact, we challenge all Jews and Christians to provide proper evidence that Nineveh could hold such a big population within its walls. As Charles Halton says in his paper, once one begins to ponder the relation of the description of Nineveh's size in Jonah 3:3 with current archaeological reconstructions that seem to contradict almost every modern translation of this clause, questions begin to arise. The size of Nineveh is less than other cities, such as medieval Athens, which were more compact and bigger and still had only 150,000 people in them. Thus, Jonah here is in error. The Qur'an's version. The Qur'an also refers to the prophet Jonah and recounts his story in chapter 37, Surah As-Safat, verses 139 to 148. The Qur'an also mentions his people, and more interestingly their number, directly in 37:147. Specifically though, and we sent him to 100,000 people or more. Scholarly commentary and exegesis say that this verse refers to Jonah being sent back to the people that Jonah originally came from. As an example, we present Ibn Kathir's tafsir, where in his commentary on verse 147, he comments on the exact number referred to him by previous scholars. He quotes, Makhul said, they numbered 110,000. This was reported by Ibn Abi Hatim. Ibn Jarir said, some of the scholars of Arabic, the people of Basra, said that this means up to 100,000 or more. At-Tabari 21:116. It is clear, whether from the apparent from various accepted translations or from exegetical works/commentaries, that the Quran verse 37:147 has been almost universally accepted as being in reference to sending Jonah back to the people of Nineveh. It directly mentions the number of people Jonah was sent to as being 100,000 as a minimum, with some scholars saying that 110,000, as seen in Ibn Kathir's commentary, some saying no more or no less than 100,000. And some providing slightly higher numbers, such as in Tafsir al-Jalalain. Regardless of the exact number, this is a plausible estimate for the people of Nineveh at the time of Jonah, which is, well, in the range of the 100 to 150,000 population estimate. We would also like to mention that the Quran goes against the traditional understanding of Jonah according to Jonah 4:11, where it detracts from the number presented in the book of Jonah. It is also worth noting that ancient writers are known for their aggrandizement of events generally, and therefore the Quran stands out, as it does the exact opposite and diminishes the number presented in Jonah 4:11, regardless of the approach to Jonah 4:11. This diminishment to oppose aggrandizement parallels what is seen with the story of Moses and the Exodus, where the number of people is similarly dropped between the Old Testament and the Quran for seemingly no reason until modern times, where we realized that the Quran is correcting the Bible, historically speaking. We therefore argue that this historical correction strengthens the veracity of the Quran, while also detracting from the reliability and historicity of the Old Testament, and stands against the narrative that the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, took from works available to them. On the contrary, he is a true prophet of the one true God, the same God who created Jesus. Glory be to Allah. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.